Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bay Area Musicians Podcast, Episode 4. I am your host, Matt Gretter. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We got a very special episode for you today. We have not only one of my closest friends, period, but also I consider a brother in life as well. He is an amazing upcoming country artist who has 3 consecutive top 100 breaking songs on iTunes. One of them actually reaching within the top 50. In fact, we'll just say the top 40. It sounds even better. But it is absolutely true. He has an incredible story, and we are very happy to have him here on the show. Mr. Mike Annuzzi. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Matt. What a wonderful introduction. What an honor it is to be here with you.
It's an honor to have you here. And it's just pure amazement. Even I'm just barely able to contain myself that the fact that you are here right now. I very much love the fact that you're here.
Matt, when you call me, of course I'll be there. It's such a thrill. For all the Bay Area musicians that are tuning into this, if you don't know who Matt Gretter is, you're the most humble and passionate musician I think I've ever met, and it's such a thrill being here talking music with you.
Oh, thank you very much. It really means a lot. And you are definitely, and I'm not just saying this because I play for you, but it is just pure truth itself as a human being, that you are one of the most appreciative and most gracious human beings I've ever met in my life. Every single show that we do, I'm not expecting this, but it always happens. And even though I'm a very monotone kind of guy and I don't typically wear my emotion on my sleeve very well, but up and down, it makes me jump up and down every time. The very next day after a show, when you call me just to show your appreciation for what I bring.
Yes.
And it's something that always makes me jump up and down inside, and I'm very much appreciative of that.
Thank you. And likewise, Matt. I go through all the shows that I play, moment by moment, and sometimes I get analytical about everything, and there's just all these highlights that I get to share, and I hope that, I can make it aware of, what a thrill it is for me to get on a stage with you. I always walk on confident, and I walk off even more confident, so I am truly grateful for all of those moments, and I look forward to many more.
Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to many more, too.
Thank you.
Well, we got a whole lot to cover here today. Basically, for those of you who are listening right now, who, for the very first time, what exactly is the Bay Area Musicians Podcast? It's all about really introducing the incredible musicians that really populate this region here, and kind of shining a light on the music scene in general, and particularly when it comes to the musicians. We like to really think about, or at least dive into, how we all got started in music out here, what our influences are, what our goals are, and really what our experiences in general playing in the Bay Area, and also branching out to different parts of California, which may not necessarily have a light shined on them. This is what this podcast is all about. And so you are no exception. So what I would like to really begin with for those who may not have heard of you, where did your musical story begin? Were you born into a musical family, or when did you realize, hey, I want to be a musician, and when did all that start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was born into a family that loved music, but it wasn't every day. My father plays the accordion. He still plays the accordion. So I really attribute the start of my passion in music with seeing my father actually playing an instrument. I think it was so valuable to me to actually, instead of witnessing it just on TV and seeing some star being able to play an instrument in public or whatever, I actually watched my dad right in front of me, playing an instrument and creating some amazing sounds. So that was probably my most influential start. And it's funny because, I was the only kid out of 3 that did not have music lessons growing up.
Really?
I have an older brother and sister that both took piano lessons and music lessons, and I was the one that was I didn't have that, but I wanted it. So I saw a couple of my neighbors playing musical instruments, guitar and bass, and I wanted to jump right into that. Guitar was something that landed in my hands. I was about 10 years old the first time I touched a guitar. And I think already by then I was like actually really into writing songs. I think around 8 years old was the first time I actually wrote a song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember I was like learning how to ride my bike with no hands, and I was clapping. I didn't know how to play anything, but I was clapping. And, just like that, all those things, they just, whatever it is, it landed that way. And it happened. And I kept pursuing that as a child. And fortunately, I've had a lot of people, since day one of starting music that really were positive about it and encouraging. And even though I didn't have lessons, I wasn't afraid to not do well. I don't know. The lessons came much later. So
yeah, kind of learning by doing, if you will.
That's so funny, Matt, because I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. The motto of the school is learn by doing.
Oh, wow.
And I went into Cal Poly with a major in economics because I heard Mick Jagger was an economics major in university. And so I was like, well, if Mick Jagger is an economics major, maybe I'll learn something by being an econ major. I wasn't super passionate about that. I ended up changing my major into music. And the funny thing is, too, as a guitar player, that's my main instrument. That's always been my main instrument. It's like my third arm, if you will. And just going into the major of music, like when you get a college degree in music, you're really leveling up. I never knew how to read music. That's not something I did. And so when I changed from, the business aspect of music to literally the critical and theoretical aspect of music, I really had to push myself. And it's something that came a little later for me, I was 21 years old at that point or something.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And I think you may have told me this at one point, and I very well could be wrong about this, but I think as a part of your musical journey and at least getting into like the industry of music and stuff, and call me out if I'm completely wrong about this, but wasn't there one point where you actually worked as a talent booker for Live Nation?
It was not for Live Nation. No.
Oh, no.
But I was a talent buyer, and a talent buyer essentially, for people listening, they don't know that, it's like the booker of a venue. So I worked for a venue to specifically fill the nights of music that were needed. And then I did the whole from start to finish, how is that going to look? I was involved in a lot of the different operation aspects. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So like the difference between a talent buyer versus like a booking agent, based on what I just heard, the booking agent more or less works for the artist. Doesn't matter what the venue is. They're just trying to get the artist booked. Whereas the talent buyer / talent booker, you're specifically looking for the venue, just trying to fill time.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense.
A lot of people too relate a talent buyer to a promoter also, but that's also a different level. So yeah, booking agent would work for an artist. Talent buyer works for a venue. Promoter could be an independent person that's trying to connect those dots together.
Oh, okay. You learn something new every day, folks. Yeah. So I've always heard of booking agent, but when you said talent buyer or talent booker, I was like, okay, well, what's the difference? Well, now we know. So that's super cool. Going back very quick to how you got into music and everything. What were your parents very supportive? Like particularly your dad, who is the accordion player. Was he very supportive in you taking on music as like your main like road in life?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think they had any path for me, what they wanted for me. I know that they were supportive as a child. I mean, if you really think about it, it's kind of like my mom and dad. My dad found a guitar for me, and then they made me buy it, right? Like that was something at 11 years old. It's like, how am I going to afford a guitar? Well, if you want it, you got to go get it. Right. But then again, I start thinking back is I didn't know how to play. And every day I played really loud at home. And I think about like what they went through to allow me to do that. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of the same thing with me. Although this was under extremely rare circumstances, but the very first drum kit that I got, it just so happened that a family friend's kid he happened to have a drum kit, which was no major brand name or anything. It was just a cheapo thing. And he heard that I was interested in playing drums. Hey, I'll give you the whole thing for $20.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, oh, okay.
Okay.
And so set it up in my room, and I didn't know really how to play. The only thing as far as like the learning by doing type thing is that I would have the stereo in the corner of my room, and I would sit on my bed and imagine Neil Peart of Rush's drum kit around me and try to play Rush songs.
Wow.
Just thinking, okay, this sound... I remember the picture of his drum kit. This round thing looks like it would make this sound over here. Totally. And then this one here makes this sound. Okay. Just try to mimic what I heard. And I think probably for like the first year and a half, it was not musical at all. Yeah. It was just trying to mimic what I heard, but not even thinking about the fine details of playing. It was really an excuse to start. And that's where it all really begins. You pick up your first instrument, no matter what it is. You may have a general knowledge about it, but you really don't understand it until you strum the strings, until you hit that first drum. You don't really understand it until you actually start doing it.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I continue to strive for.
Likewise.
I don't want to pick up the instrument and just be mechanical about it. I want to kind of go back to the innocence of it.
Yeah, and I find myself in recent times trying to tap into that too, where it's like when I was 13 years old, just trying to learn like how to execute AC/DC properly. Yeah. Even though the parts themselves are very simple on the drums, just how to get the feeling of it, and just tapping into like the like how I would try to do it is I would try to tap it into my soul as if I was a fan of the band, listening to the music.
Yeah.
And how does that song make me feel, and how does that translate through my hands and my feet?
Totally.
And I find myself even today trying to do that. Which is hard to do at times when you're thinking about all the technical aspects of music, and you start the fine line is you're aware of all the technical stuff, which is very important. Yeah. But when thinking music becomes the forefront instead of feeling the music, that's when it all falls apart.
I will say, I remember telling you this. I've talked to almost every single musician that I've ever stepped on a stage with. Especially musicians that are playing my songs.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard to get into playing a part that's already there. Like, you know, you're a drummer, you hear the drums, but that was me playing the drums. It's not you. And I don't want like you, like for example, to lose who you are as a drummer because you're just filling a part or playing a part. That's not what it's about.
No.
You know, when you're playing a note, it's got to be a feeling, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Matt Gretter has to shine, you know. That's so important that we're lucky to get to witness you playing drums.
Yeah, and therefore, if I'm able to, then you are able to.
Exactly.
So we both feed off of each other.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things why I really believe that our chemistry as musicians really works so well. And one thing, when you introduce new songs to me of yours, yes, either you're playing the drums or somebody that you had before is playing parts. Okay, well, I know what the parts are, but I try to listen to the whole big picture, like tapping into what my younger self was doing.
Awesome.
So how do I put this? I think that what I try to tap into is like, the drums themselves are like the intensity of of what I play, but like the musicians or the other instruments, the guitar, steel guitar, bass, and maybe some organ and stuff, that provides the atmosphere of emotion.
Awesome.
And I try to, what are the other instruments doing? How are those other instruments, not the drums, how are the other instruments making me feel as a person? And therefore, that dictates how my body moves and how that dictates the feeling going into my drums.
Wow.
And obviously, like doing, I try to honor the original parts because those are the parts that you had envisioned for the song at the time. And I want to, and as a drummer, I need to honor the general groove and the general vibe of any song, no matter what it is. But you can't sacrifice your own originality. So like in the verse section, I keep the groove the same. I would keep the groove the same because that is an essential part. But when it comes to transitioning, like in between sections, you do have to keep in mind what is necessary for the song. Like you're not going to be doing like for example, like a 6/8 type ballad song and then break into, you can't do that because it doesn't work. Even though that may be a part of my personality, which it really isn't as a musician, but just as an example, that's just something that's not going to work. Yeah. So you have to think of what could work for the genre of the song and the general vibe of it.
Totally.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be like you're mimicking 100% of what you hear. You're allowed to throw in a little bit of your own style and say, hey, I'm a drummer. I can play what the song requires, but I can also throw in a little bit of myself.
Yeah.
And so it's a fine line there,
and it does depend on the artist, I will say, because like I've been a hired gun for different roles in different groups too. And like, some of them I have to play note for note and it has to be exact and I'm getting paid to play the exact thing. And, there are roles like that. I just don't think that's how music should be. Live music, I should say.
Right.
I know how important it is and how competitive it is in the studio to be locked in and on, and every note is there for a specific reason in that audio recording.
Because every note counts in the studio.
Every note counts. But live, I've played with you on stage enough where, my back is to you during the shows, but I almost can see what you're doing just by the sound that you're giving off. I could almost feel like your actions and your movements.
Even the stick twirling?
Just this, absolutely the stick twirling. I could feel it happening and it excites me. But I can't even see it, but I could feel it.
Yeah.
I just know it's happening. And if I turn around in certain moments, I know where you're at in your performance.
Yeah.
That's really important to maintain in general. And it's not an easy thing to do. And, I guess even too, I'm going to say for the minimal amounts of times that we've gotten together to dial in the sound or to rehearse, how many has it been? Not a lot.
No.
Twice, maybe once.
If that.
Like a couple of songs. I remember I had a cajon at my house and that we went through 3 or 4 songs once. I don't remember. Well, that just is a testament, I guess, to you, but also as a musician, the maturity level. You've practiced, but it's not about the practice. It's about the execution. You could be the best drummer, the best guitar player, but when you get on that stage, I heard an interview with Vince Gill the other day, and Paul Franklin, who I mentioned earlier, is a pedal steel guitarist, and these are two musicians that I very much look up to, and they were talking about why they work so well together, and it was because there was no ego involved, and they were serving the song.
Yeah.
And, for somebody like Vince Gill and Paul Franklin to say that, these are two iconic people in music. They've changed music, from songwriting to performance to all of that, their level is so high. Their ego is completely out of it because they're serving the song. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, the music is the most important thing. It's not about who is at play. Obviously, everybody has their own flavors and their own taste that they have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
But the sole focus needs to be the music. It's not about the guitars. It's not about the vocals. It's not about the drums. It's not about the bass. It's about the music.
I love it.
So that's the primary focus that music making needs to be, and that translates to on stage as well, in my humble opinion, which I think you may share as well.
I do.
Okay, so as you mentioned, you started writing songs at a very early age, and you are a native of Redwood City, California.
Correct.
A very close neighboring city to my own, San Mateo. Living in the Bay Area and starting your songwriting in the Bay Area, of course, like, were there parts of the Bay Area itself that really influenced your songwriting at that early time, or even that translates into songwriting today?
Wow. Let's see. That's a really interesting question. So, I mean, this is not a very competitive area for music, and at the same time, it is a super competitive area. I was thinking about this a lot lately. Like, if you're shining in the Bay Area, you're shining because there's a reason. It's a big deal. Like, this is a very, very large population of people, and there are a lot of superstar musicians that are here. Fortunately, I get to play with a lot of those people, and I get to watch them play. And, I think that just having that as it's not a competition, and at the same time, if I'm really trying to be there on a level, like for my career, I guess this answer kind of is broader. I'm not in the same position I was, let's say, 20 years ago, where I started and I was trying to get my feet wet. Well, today I have to keep what I have, and I'm trying to grow even more.
Right.
So I'm at a weird position, but I have to look at what are the other people doing around me? Why are they shining and stuff? But how can I get better? I don't really care about what anyone else is doing. Like, I know I told you again, I'm bringing up pedal steel guitar, but how can I get better as a musician? I haven't been writing as much as I'd like to. Well, I got a pedal steel recently, and I've been playing on and off for about 10 years now, but I set it up and I started writing a lot of music on there. And I go back to the days of, when you got your first drum set for $20 and I got my first guitar and I didn't know what I was doing. Well, that's kind of how I feel on the pedal steel sometimes, is I don't know the rules enough to care. I just want to grow as a musician, and I hear something in my head. I guess that's the maturity and growth of songwriting. You know what you're looking for. You have the means of the overall, but you're still going at it innocently. Some of the Bay Area musicians that I look at have, these international tours under their belt that are like, how do I get to come see you at a club for free kind of situation? This is unbelievable what the talent we have here.
Yeah.
I will say that I started writing songs as a young boy, and then I got really serious in high school. When I started writing more sophisticated, I guess, or like, okay, this is actually a start to finish kind of song, then I started dialing in a little bit more on what is the meaning behind these songs. My words really became more well-crafted. I got involved in a lot of songwriter competitions and stuff. Uh-huh. And again, I hate the word competition with music, but I did get involved with a lot of those. And it helped me realize, like, I was walking into a room full of songwriters that, all of them have a means of putting out great music and great songs. But I walked in a little timid going, I don't think I'm there yet, but I don't know, somehow I won all those competitions. And I didn't look at it as winning because I wasn't there in my head.
Right.
I knew I could write a better song, or if I wrote one song that resonated, now I have to follow it. And that was the hardest part for me, actually, because you could write one song and it's great, but can you write 10? Yeah. And now can you write 30? And how many more can you put out? And it's like, now you got to make them sound right together. And as an artist, that's something that I really try and make sure that my voice is coming out in the way that I want it to. Even if the stories are different, you know, in between songs, that there's an overall kind of theme that I'm going off of. Yeah, it's a cool craft. It's something that I'm trying to work on actually a lot more deeply lately. Whereas the last several years I've been playing live more, but the songwriting craft is like, it's something that I'm trying to dial in more. How do I connect to a person that's 19 years old versus 59 years old? You know?
Yeah.
Or how do I connect to both of them?
Right.
Because, like, you know, at some point in the career, you know, your target demographic is super broad. I don't want to narrow it to a tiny demographic. I've always tried to keep that demographic as broad as possible. You know,
kind of like if this was ever present in your mind when it came to your songwriting, but using more universal themes instead of write songs that particularly include iPhone usage or whatever. Totally. That would naturally narrow that target demographic. You just keeping everything broad that relates to a whole broader audience in general.
Isn't it funny how words are actually super important?
They are more powerful than Superman.
Yeah. And then the other thing is too, you know, putting the music to those words, it's got to fit, you know, and like every note is so important, really. But
yeah, and each artist's writing process and each band's writing process is completely different. And so, like one example that I can think of was when Rush, my favorite band for those who don't know, when they were writing songs, Geddy and Alex, bass player and guitar player, they would actually write out music that came to their minds, and then Neil, who was actually the lyricist of the band for those who don't know, he would just write stuff that that he had a notepad on him, and anything that came to his mind, no matter where he was, it didn't matter. A lot of them were not even done in the same room together.
Yeah,
and Geddy and Alex would have some kind of a riff or some kind of a general song idea, and then Neil would drop off some kind of a lyric that he would write just for the heck of it, and Geddy and Alex would look at him and they would be like, "Hey, this actually fits what we were doing. Let's turn it into a song." Or Geddy pointed this out. There will be times where Neil wrote out an entire lyric, but he would only like 4 lines on the page, and he would take the 4 lines out of that whole lyric and say to Neil, "Hey, these lines work for what we had done, and you can you can use that as inspiration to maybe try to rewrite something around all of those 4 lines," and Neil would do it.
That's super cool.
And that's how their writing process was. That's just one example, but it's it's just amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people really succeed with the collaborative writing, you know, like getting together with somebody, or like I personally, I'm not that great at the collaborative writing situation. I've done it many times, and like I go into it thinking the song will go one way and then it goes another, and it just disappoints me. And so like I get really connected to the song, you know? And so like I want it to go a certain way, and so I'm excited when I get to finish. It takes me a little bit longer to finish a song sometimes. Like sometimes they just in 5 minutes. I can't even play the song in 5 minutes. The song is already written, you know?
Yeah.
But in other times it's like, you know, this song took me 3 months to like finish, you know?
Yeah, for sure. If you're okay with this,
Yeah.
would it be all right if we played one of your songs?
Absolutely.
Cool. So this song that we are about to play for you folks actually made it within the iTunes top 50, top 40. And this was Mike's third release in a row that cracked the top 100. And it is an absolutely amazing song. And on this one, if I'm understanding this right, you recorded all the instruments on this one.
Yeah.
And it's an absolutely favorite song of mine to play.
Thank you.
Every time it's in the set list on stage, I love it because I love the atmosphere of it. And how we play it live is a little bit different, but I'm allowed to bring my creative footprint to it, which is a very important thing for me as a musician. And I love the fact that you love what I have to bring to it. And it is absolutely amazing no matter what. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to play that for you now. This is the latest release from Mike Annuzzi that cracked the top iTunes top 40 called Let Me Show You Tonight. Hope you enjoy.
Sometimes I don't know what to say, and words just fail me. I want you to know that I'm trying. You know, maybe we'll see in time. Eventually we will. And putting your heart and soul on the line, it will reveal everything. Make reality a dream, yeah. 'Cause I never cared so much about anyone. I never knew that life could be this fun until I fell in love and felt it every day. And I say it 'cause I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I felt it from the very start, and it could take the rest of my life. But let me show you tonight. Taking it day by day. No matter what the others say, I'll always be here by your side. Making a memory with a smile so bright you could see. I've never felt something so right. No, I could never turn around. No, I will never let you down. No, 'cause I never cared so much about anyone. I never knew that life could be this fun until I fell in love and felt it every day. And I say it 'cause I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I felt it from the very start, and it could take the rest of my life. But let me show you tonight. I've been waiting for so long to find someone I can rely on. Girl, I swear I'll make this right. If it takes the rest of my life to prove it all to you, yeah. 'Cause I never cared so much about anyone. I never knew that life could be this fun until I fell in love and felt it every day. And I say it 'cause I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I felt it from the very start, and it could take the rest of my life. Oh, and it could take the rest of my life. Oh, and it could take the rest of my life. But let me show you tonight. let me show you tonight.
Let Me Show You Tonight by Mike Annuzzi. That is an absolutely amazing song. I'm not saying that because I am your drummer and you asked me to play it almost every single show that I play with you, but it is just an absolutely amazing song. And the fact that you pretty much pulled a Dave Grohl. You recorded everything yourself and you published it the way that you recorded it. And that is absolutely amazing. What exactly was the process for this song? It doesn't have to be, you know, forensic or anything, but just generally what inspired the song and what was the process like of recording and pretty much up to publishing, and how did it feel when it actually made it past the top 50 on iTunes?
Yeah. Wow. You know, I really appreciate you playing that. It's so cool listening back to that song because I don't listen to it. I don't listen to my stuff like all that often.
Kind of the same thing because if it's like looking at old pictures of yourself in a way. But I got to say, though, I listen to that song legitimately every single day.
Awesome. Dude, thank you. That means a lot to me. I mean, you know, it's a love song. And like, I mean, it's actually like that's a lot of the themes around my music that, you know, I wrote that song like, I don't know, 10 years ago or more.
Wow.
I wrote that a while ago. I've released it a couple different ways, but this actually recording that I did, I started recording it about 10 years ago. Bass, drums, guitars, and then I added to it. And, you know, it came out and it was like top 40. Well, you know, something for me that I was going to explain is like, being in the top 100, if you look at the top 100 of any of the Apple charts, you're going to see all household names. So for me to be listed on that, it was a major deal. But then they have a list of the top 200, and all 200 are household names or major signed artists. And I was the only independent artist on the top 100 of every time I released these last 3 singles, which I'm so grateful. And those songs were on Bay Area radio. Like it was on K-Bay or Bay Country, and it was on
107.7.
107.7 The Bone. It was on KRTY, which KRTY is like a revolutionary radio station. It's the biggest country music radio station outside of Nashville. For them to play my music, they're an independent radio station.
Yeah.
They define country music of the Bay Area, and for them to even play my stuff, all of the radio stations, you know, Star 101.3 has played my music in the past, and it's like, it's so crazy to think that this happens. And like, you know, I was recording the bass riff of that song in my bedroom closet of my parents' house. I don't know, maybe it was like 12 or 15 years ago.
Wow.
You know, and that stayed in the recording. Yeah, so that process, it does take time sometimes for me, but like I can really hear it throughout the last maybe 6 months of finalizing that production, because like that's the big deal is like getting what you hear in your head to an audio.
Yeah.
I was able to send it off. The last 3 singles I sent off to the Ruckus Room. Jamie Tate in Nashville, Tennessee is like a super, super amazing engineer, and the Ruckus Room, they've recently closed, but they've worked with everyone from Taylor Swift, Garth Brooks, Billy Currington, and you know, I got to play a show with Billy Currington from audio recording that came out of the studio that made all of his songs famous. You know, it's just like sometimes I feel like dreams come true. In my world, it feels like the dream came true with releasing these songs, and yeah, it's amazing.
This is an amazing conversation with Mike Annuzzi, and we thank you so much for tuning in with us. We do have to cut the show short, but we will have a part 2 of this amazing conversation with Mike Annuzzi coming next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time on the Bay Area Musicians Podcast.